지금 자리를 다 앉지 않으신 것 같은데요. 안녕하십니까. 지금부터 플러그인 토크를 시작하겠습니다. 저는 머니투데이 키플랫폼 특별 취재팀 수석 기자 정진우입니다. 행사의 이틀째인 오늘도 자리를 가득 메워주셨는데요. 고맙습니다. 어제도 잠깐 말씀드렸지만 취재팀은 지난 9개월 동안 4만 킬로미터, 그러니까 지구 한 바퀴에 달하는 취재 여정을 통해 글로벌 혁신 기업들이 탐색과 실험을 끊임없이 하면서 또 양손잡이 조직으로 빠르게 움직이면서 혁신 실행력을 높이고 있다는 걸 알게 됐습니다. 그리고 어제 총회에서 저희가 취재한 그 내용들을 낱낱이 여러분께 공개했습니다. 취재팀이 전 세계 취재 현장에서 깨달은 건 혁신 기업들은 꿈을 갖고 있다는 겁니다. 또 목표의식이 뚜렷했습니다. 내가 왜 이 일을 하고 있을까? 조금 더 가치 있는 일은 없을까? 여기에 대한 명확한 답을 갖고 있었습니다. 그리고 자발적으로 스스로 움직이고 실행하고 있었습니다. 글로벌 혁신 기업을 직접 찾아가 CEO 혹은 고위 임원들을 만나 인터뷰한 결과가 그렇습니다. 그 바탕에 무엇이 있었을까요? 바로 주인의식이 있었습니다. 우리 한번 해보자, 세상을 바꿔보자와 같은 조직원들을 능동적으로 움직이게 하는 비전이 있었습니다. 마치 드라마 미생의 장그래가 너 왜 그 일을 하냐? 이런 질문을 받았을 때 우리 회사니까요. 이렇게 마음을 울리는 말을 한 것처럼 말이죠. 이번 플러그인 앤 토크 시간은 취재팀이 글로벌 혁신 현장에서 느낀 생생한 감동을 여러분과 함께 나누기 위해 마련했습니다. 실리콘밸리에서 직접 인터뷰한 글로벌 혁신 기업 경영진들을 이 자리에 모시고 말이죠. 지금 글로벌 시장은 어떤 상황이고 이들은 어떻게 혁신했는지, 또 조직원들이 지치지 않고 끊임없이 탐색과 실험을 했는지 그 비결을 듣고자 합니다. 한 분씩 모시고 그 기업의 혁신 비결을 들어본 후 저희가 패널 토의를 진행하겠습니다. 그러면 간략하게 패널 분들을 잠깐 소개를 올리고 시작을 하겠습니다. 이 오른쪽에 계신 분부터 소개를 드릴 텐데요. 비카스 크리샤나 CA 테크놀로지 부사장님, 딘 시바라 SAP 부사장님, 헬더 안토네스 시스코 선임이사님, 제니강 시만테 국제부 이사님, 그리고 오늘 패널 토의를 같이 진행해줄 이호준 헤이그룹 코리아 전무님과 유성문 라이엇 게임즈 코리아 이사님입니다. 그럼 먼저 비카스 크리샤나 CA 테크놀로지 부사장님을 모시고 이노베이션 인 모빌리티 앤 IoT란 주제의 발표를 들어보시겠습니다. 미국 글로벌 소프트웨어 솔루션 기업 CA 테크놀로지에서 혁신 사업을 이끌고 계신 크리샤나 부사장님을 소개하겠습니다. 크리샤나.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure to be here, and I thank you all very much for inviting me. 감사합니다. It's one word of Korean that I picked up. So I work at CA Technologies, where I am responsible for two businesses, IoT and enterprise mobility. And I'm going to talk about innovation in general, as well as innovation in these two areas. But regardless of the company that I have worked at, whether it is CA Technologies for 2 years, or IBM Research as part of IBM for 15 years, and then in between IBM and CA at a Japanese company called Ricoh for 3 years when I ran their R&D in Menlo Park in California, I have seen innovation occur at the intersection of three attributes. One is the need for ideas. You have to have ideas without which innovation cannot occur. Then the ideas have to be useful. In other words, there have to be user needs for those ideas, because if there is no user need, no matter how many ideas you have, the innovation is going to be useless. And the third attribute that you need, the third dimension that you need is the enabling technology. If the technology is just not there, and you have ideas and you have a user need, for example, I would like to be able to go to Mars every day and come back home for dinner. It's a very nice idea. It probably has some use. Some rich people might want to do that, but there is no technology today that allows you to accomplish that. Elon Musk is working on that, but it'll take a little while. So unless you have the technology, the innovation will not be possible as well. So let's see how we have applied, in the case of CA, that intersection to bring about innovation in the area of mobility and in IoT as well. So I think everybody in this room has a smartphone. I used to ask how many people have a smartphone. Now I ask how many do not have a smartphone. Okay, nobody doesn't have a smartphone. So everybody agrees that mobility is a very powerful trend. It enables employees, people, to become very productive by being able to work from anywhere, anytime, on any device. It makes companies more profitable because customers, such as the customers of a bank, can consume their business services from anywhere, anytime, on any device, which results in more usage of those business services and drives up revenues because of the fees and transaction commissions associated with each transaction, and possibly the profits for those companies. And then the intersection of mobility with IoT, Internet of Things, this other big trend, results in a strategic advantage for enterprises, for companies. For example, being able to manage their infrastructures, their data centers, from mobile devices from anywhere in the world at any time, turning off lights, whatever needs to be done can be done remotely in a very secure manner. And that's a very simple example. So when I started the mobility business at CA Technologies 2 years ago, we did some research and we found that 64% of enterprises, large companies, those are our customers, CA is a top 10 enterprise software provider, are planning or implementing app stores. Just like Apple has its app store, every company is planning its own app store. 73% planning or implementing mobile apps. So companies are writing their own mobile applications. 65% planning or implementing tablets for the employees. So you have heard of BYOD, bring your own device, but enterprises are scared of BYOD, so they are giving out their own tablets, so they have some control over what's going on those tablets. 75% are planning or implementing smartphones. They're giving out smartphones to their employees. But regardless of whose device it is, mine or the employer's, the challenges and problems are still the same. Device loss, data contamination. I can easily take some data from a business application, do a copy, paste, and paste that into a personal application and send the data out. Or I can lose my device and lose all the business data on it. So the challenges are still the same, which results in a very important need for securing applications and data on those mobile devices. But security comes at a cost. How many here like to type in a password? Nobody. Nobody likes to type in a password, right? But you have to have a password or multi-factor authentication and things like that to be able to secure information. So it comes at the expense of user experience. So enterprises responded by thinking, let's secure the device. It's all about the device. And that is not true, because devices cost $400, $500. If I lose my device, I can easily buy one. Then they started thinking it's about the data on the devices. And that is true, because the data is really the crown jewel of an enterprise, documents, patents, and things like that. But what it is most important here is the user experience. Because if you don't have a good user experience around the security, right, then any investments in buying those applications, in buying those devices, in buying the wherewithal, in buying the solutions to manage them and secure them will all go waste, because today's users, if they don't like the app, they will forget about it. So, so let's look at, this slide is actually supposed to build up, but I don't know why it's not doing that here. But let's look at this balance between security and usability, right? So in 2010, before we started the mobility business, mobile device management, MDM solutions were all the rage. Everybody was buying those solutions, but with mobile device management, the enterprise can see everything on the user's device, even if it doesn't belong to them. So all the applications, all the data, and as a result, the users revolted, and the user experience was like that, right? Where people started complaining, and they didn't want to use MDM solutions on their devices. Then they thought, let's do a remote desktop, take a remote desktop approach. So there was the next level of innovation, where they said, let's put everything in the data center and run everything in the data center and just send some frames over to the user's device. So if the device is lost, doesn't matter, the data is still in the data center. But the problem with that is, if you're going to run something in a data center, you're going to run it on Linux or Windows, not on iOS or Android, and the user experience is horrible because with Linux and Windows, you need a mouse to click around, but there is no mouse on the mobile device. So that did not work, and the users were unhappy there as well. Then somebody thought of virtualization. Let's have a phone inside a phone, a virtual phone. And in the virtual phone, we'll run business applications and business data. And on the outside phone, the parent phone will run the personal applications and have personal data. And that is also a very big problem because mobile devices are only now becoming as powerful as desktops and so on. And it was very difficult to run two phones on the same hardware. Then they thought of doing containerization, where you take the business applications and business data and put it inside a separate container, a separate area of the device, and everything would be secure. But now, users became a little confused because if I need a file, I need to go, and it's a business file, I have to go to one area of the device. If I need a personal file, then I say, oh, I have to go to a different area of the device. And that became a hassle for the user. So the user experience was not good. Or as we say in the United States, the user experience sucked. So what the users did was they decided not to use that approach as well. And what they have started doing now, and this is the innovation that we brought about at CA and have some patents and IP around, is the notion of app wrapping and data wrapping, where you take just those applications, the sensitive business applications, and just those pieces of data, just those files that need securing, and wrap them with the security and policies that matter to that file. And now, the user doesn't have to think about a different device or a different container or a different area of the device. They can just go and go about their business, but the data or the application knows whether it should open up in a public environment or in a Starbucks network or what have you, or after 5 o'clock maybe, or it should tell the user to come back later on. So every piece of data and every application is now smart enough to be able to handle its own security. So what does a mobile user really need, a person like this, really need when it comes to enterprise mobility? And that's moving into IoT as well. Typically, they need a choice of devices. So everybody wants to have their own choice. I like iOS. Somebody might like Android. They want to pick whatever they like. They want zero intrusion or 100% privacy. What that means is that if I bring my device, my phone, to my company and use it for my business, and the company puts some profile, some agent on my device to manage it remotely, I don't want them seeing any of my personal applications and personal data. Then they want zero friction. So if the company is going to give me a device, I don't want to spend 5 days trying to get it set up VPN and password and this and that. I want the experience to be exactly the same as when Apple ships me a device and I open the nice box and I'm up and running in five minutes. So they want that in the enterprise too. Then they want a smart versus not enterprise mobility management suite. Typically, as I mentioned earlier, management is about security. That's why you have management. And that results in bad user experience. But if you have a smart mobile management solution, then that results in a good user experience. And that's something that we innovated around. Real-time support. So in today's environment, whenever your app does not work on your smart device, nobody likes to call up the phone and say, hey, my app is not working. People just switch over to the next app that does the same thing. Nobody goes and calls a help desk. So what is becoming important in the area of mobility, the innovation now is around being able to tap within the app and get a live person on the phone, on the device with you to be able to fix your problem and get you going. Self-service, so in addition to being able to create a problem ticket as well as look up some FAQs, users also want to be able to order their own device, change their carrier. I hate AT&T, for example. I can change to Verizon. Those things can be done automatically, and now more and more users in the enterprise are demanding that. And then integration with the rest of the infrastructure. So until now, mobility was a silo. It was a separate thing altogether where you worked on your mobile device, but it was not really connected with the back-end systems. So if you had a problem, you call the help desk, and they have to ask you, who are you, what device are you using, what operating system, et cetera, et cetera. But if the mobile management software is integrated with the rest of the infrastructure, then all those questions can be eliminated because your information is already in the system. So when you call with the problem, then they can get you going with the resolution part of the problem as opposed to the determination part of the problem, determination part of the call that you just made. And then in the age of mobility, nobody wants to wait for 3 months or 1 year to get the next version of the app. The app updates happen on a daily basis, and any enterprise that provides an app, either by building their own or by buying it from somebody else, they need to be able to push updates to their employees and their customer base on a daily basis as they discover problems and as they fix the problems. And then the ultimate in user experience and user interface. I think that's to be expected ever since the iPhone arrived. So these are some of the innovations that are happening in the area of mobility. And what I'll talk next about is how some of these are being taken care of by us at CA, as well as in general by the industry as well. So in the remaining time that I have, I'll talk about smart collaboration. So in today's systems, and this is my first product at CA, in today's systems, if you pick up a mobile device and start using it to browse Dropbox or Box or some of these content applications, today you have to use different applications for different providers, one for Box, one for Dropbox, one for OneDrive, one for Google Drive. So now I have 17 different applications, which is a mess when trying to connect to different systems to get to my files. So we built a product that gives you the view into all your files, regardless of where they are, SharePoint, Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, wherever they are. Everything is available in one single app. So that's one innovation that many others have made as well. So nothing great about us doing that. But where we innovated further is in the area of collaboration. So today, in any content application, if you select a file and you want to collaborate with somebody, you get a big box that has all the names of all the people in the company. And you have to select who you want to send this document to. And in the US, for example, in a company like IBM, where I was working before, where there are 400,000 people, if you were looking for a John Smith, then good luck. You will get 17,000 John Smiths. And you have to figure out which is the John Smith that you're looking for. Is it the one in HR, one in finance, some friend, some partner? But by looking at the document, by understanding the document that you just selected, using natural language understanding, by looking at your interactions, who have you interacted with in the past, and so on, we can very quickly give you the person that we think you need to be able to collaborate. So very quickly, we say, oh, this is the person you're looking for. You tap, and you are ready to go. Because in the age of mobility, speed is very critical. Patience is low, screen sizes are small, and network is flaky. You don't want to spend time waiting for a 17,000 people long list to load up before you can start collaborating. So that's an innovation that we brought about just by understanding user needs, an idea that somebody had on our team, and a technology that was possible because of all the analytics that take place that are available now to be able to figure out who is it that you want to collaborate with. Another example, this is my second product at CA, and this is about work-life integration. So I personally believe it's no longer about work-life balance. There is no such thing. We all work all the time. It's more about work-life integration, where you want to be able to do your work things from home and home things from work. 1 minute I'm taking a call from my boss, another minute I'm taking a call from my wife, who's also my boss at home. But I'm constantly switching back and forth between home and work all the time, in the evenings, on weekends, during weekdays. And I don't want to think that this is my business phone and this is my personal phone, or this is my business app or my personal app. I want everything to be available to me on the same device, in the same screen. So what this shows you is the MCM, the very first app. It's a business application, a very sensitive application that points to our patent database, but it is sitting right next to Yelp, which is a very consumer application, or Google Maps, or what have you. And the app knows how secure it needs to be, that if I am in a public place, it will not open up. If I'm trying to access it after 5 p.m., it will not open up. If I am trying to access it from Kazakhstan, for example, it might think, is he there for a business reason, or has somebody stolen their device, by looking at my itinerary and so on. So it look at all those attributes, and based on that, the app will allow me to use it or not use it, right? So this is all about bringing everything, personal and business, into the same place, and the user doesn't have to think about it, but they can go about their business or life as they choose. So this example is about real-time support. And here, the idea is, as I mentioned earlier, if you run into a problem in an app, nobody likes to pick up the phone and say, hey, my app is broken. Nobody does that anymore. Desktop, they used to do that. But they want to be able to tap on a screen and say, please help me. And somebody from the other side comes to their rescue and looks at their device live and starts making annotations, right? Starts making marks like that to tell you what you should do and what you should not do to help you out through the problem that you might be facing. So these are some of the innovations that, again, Amazon, for example, came out with the Kindle, and the Amazon live support. And we have taken a different approach, and a more innovative approach supported by IP that allows you to get to the user faster and route the call to just that person who might know about the problem that this particular user is happening. And if for some reason the app happens to crash, right, then it automatically creates a problem ticket in a database. It automatically takes the crash report, right, all the underlying symbolication and whatnot at the code level as to what really happened and the path the user took before the crash happened, and sends it to the development team in a very tight DevOps loop. DevOps is this new methodology, which again we are using very heavily, and it's all about innovating in software to be able to compress the time needed to design, build, and deploy applications. As things are being developed, developers are getting constant information on what they should be prioritizing in the next sprint, which is an agile methodology, so that they can release the next version of the software with the most critical updates and not just some good to have or nice to have features. So with that, I have 1.5 minutes left. I'll mention that going forward, right, whether it is mobility or IoT, it is all going to be about, it's going to be less about assisting or helping or managing the user, but more about empowering the user. Get out of the way of the user, manage behind the scenes. Don't even let them know that you're managing something, but let them work as they would work without any management. But the management software decides for itself when some security, when some policies are supposed to be applied, and the user can go about doing whatever they need to do. On top of that, and where the innovation comes, is not only manage behind the scenes in a very seamless manner, but also manage in a way that predicts what the user wants to do next, and maybe even do it for them. Because, as I mentioned earlier, in the case of mobility, the screen sizes are very small, there's no patience, the network connection can drop any time, and you need to be able to get your task done very fast. So that's where I see mobility evolving, and certainly where we are innovating. And if you invite me next year, I'll talk more about IoT, because I just started that business 2 weeks ago at C.E.Y Technologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you. 다음 순서는 우리 딘 시바라 SAP 부사장님을 모시고 SAP의 혁신 사례를 들어보겠습니다.
Anangsayo and kamsahamnida. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk to you a little bit about my experience with innovation, particularly at big companies. I'll help you understand how companies like SAP, a global software company, I also just recently worked at Cisco Systems, and so I'll help you understand what large enterprises do to try to be more innovative. If you talk to all companies around the world, whether they are Korean, American, Chinese, European, they all want to be innovative. You know, if you talk to any executive and you ask them, do you want to be an innovative company? They would all say yes. Nobody says, no, we don't want to be innovative. Because innovation is tied to meeting your customers' needs and demands. The innovation process at a big company is very similar to innovation at a startup, or in the startup community, I'll say. And I think there are lessons learned from both that can be used in a big company, as well as big company experiences used in the startup community. I've been fortunate also to work with a number of startups around the world, including in Silicon Valley, but also to work with some startups here in Korea. And I was at an event on Tuesday with maybe 7 to 10 startups. And we talked a little bit about Silicon Valley, why it's successful, what do we need to do in Korea to create a more robust startup community. And again, I think this plays for both startups and for big corporations as they try to innovate. As Vika said, you know, the main ingredient for a startup is to have a great idea, right? To have an idea that's unique, that meets a unique demand, has a unique value proposition for a targeted market. So let's say that's the start, both inside and outside of a company. But there are three other aspects that are real critical for a startup to succeed. The first thing is capital, funding, money. One, you know, the startups usually need some type of funding, whether they do that on their own or need a venture capitalist or an angel to provide them funding. They usually need funding. And it needs to be what we call patient capital, patient funding. Because startups take, whether they're internal to a company or external, they take 4, 5, 10 years to create and get momentum and gain you know, the market share that they need. So funding is number one. Number two is they need customers. Okay, they need people to sell their solution to. And in SAP's case, and Cisco's case, and the other folks that are on the dais, we're big companies. Most of our solutions and most of our innovation is for other companies. We don't really do much work for consumers. We don't do smart apps on mobile. Okay, we do bigger enterprise-wide types of solutions. So, but you need customers. And SAP has 30,000 customers. So we think that's a rich environment. The last one, number three, is probably the most important though. And it really is what I call a culture that allows failure. A culture that allows an entrepreneur, a startup guy, someone in your company to try something and it doesn't quite go the way we want. Maybe the timing is wrong. Maybe the customer's not ready. Okay? It's not always about that the entrepreneur was a poor businessman. But that culture of failure underlies everything else that you do within either a big company or a startup area. And I think that's probably one of the main challenges in your wonderful country, Korea. You don't yet have a culture of failure. When I talked to the startup people, you know, a couple days ago, you know, especially in a big company, if you did this, but in a small company, you fail, you're kind of out. You're kind of, you have shame. Whereas in Silicon Valley, not all of America, but in Silicon Valley, it's a special place where failure is almost a badge of honor, as long as you eventually succeed. Many of my friends have done 3, 4, 5, 6 startups, but only 1 or 2 have done well. They have more failure than success. But they're all very highly regarded. Okay, some more than others, obviously. And you hear all the time about stories of people who come to Silicon Valley, try things that doesn't work, try again, etc. And we try to create that same type of culture within the company. Okay? So I'm going to talk through a little bit about what we call intrapreneurship. Again, it's like we want to do startups within the company. We've got 75,000 people. Some of them we think are pretty bright, pretty smart. You know, they come from an environment of creation of software for customers. So we look at this program to try to create value for our customers, which are the 30,000 customers. And again, what do we want to provide them? We want to provide them funding, money to try things, patient capital. We know it's going to take, even within a company, 5 to 7 years to be successful. We're going to provide them customers, 30,000 of them. So you shouldn't be failing because you don't have customers or channels. All our partners sitting up here, they help us get to the customer. So channels shouldn't be an issue. Again, it comes back to the culture, right? And we try to create now a culture where we create an environment where they can try things, go to talk to customers, it doesn't work out, change it, pivot, etc. So let me go through that a little bit with you today. You know, and why is it hard for companies to innovate? It seems almost silly. You have 75,000 people, you have money, lots of money, You know, a lot of the Korean companies have lots of money, they do very well. And then you have lots of customers. You have ways to market. You have salesmen at the companies that you want to sell to. Okay? So you have many of the ingredients that could make you successful. But we come up with a lot of barriers to stop new ideas. Okay? And it's in America, it's in Korea, it's everywhere. We come up with barriers. This is obviously SAP is a German company, a little more conservative than Silicon Valley. And there are lots of barriers. Oh, our customers won't like that. Oh, what if it fails? What if it doesn't work? What if we get sued? There's all kinds of reasons not to do something different, right? So we try to create an environment where we can do something different. There's also a number of types of innovation. There's innovations kind of at one end. And when I was at Cisco, we had this group called the Emerging Technology Group, which was an incubator where we looked at adjacencies to the main product line. So if you know Cisco, they make network gear, routers and switches. So we looked at solutions that, kind of like I used the big boat, a little boat analogy. We tried to do boats that could feed off the big boat, but would have their own track and their own lane of success. So we created things like telepresence. Telepresence is a big meeting solution where it's live. We created physical security. We created digital media. We created connected building, smart home. All of these adjacencies, little boats that came from the big boat, but still depended on the big boat, okay? That was, at one end, a very expensive bet by John Chambers. This group reported directly to John Chambers. It was a CEO initiative. He wanted change. He wanted the next billion-dollar business to come out of this group, okay? At SAP, we have a similar group called the Global Business Incubator, a separate group reporting to the top executives that looks at adjacencies, that looks at things like, shouldn't we be doing something around wearables? What about this funny thing called Bitcoin? How is that going to affect our customers? How about digital genomics, et cetera? Connected car. All of these areas are the areas that our group looks at and says, hey, we should start a business in those areas to take advantage of opportunities and new spaces. Okay? On the other end, you have programs like my friends at Ericsson do. They want to spur internal innovation, and you come with an idea, they like the idea, they give you a $100 credit card. Go try it. Go talk to some customers. Go see if this works. Come back. Hey, we got customers that love it. Okay, we'll go to the next phase. Here's some more money. Go develop a prototype, et cetera, et cetera. So there's different ways to go about the innovation game. It doesn't have to be all, the way that Cisco did it, invest $100 million and go do a different division that's going to create the next billion-dollar business. It can be smaller. What you have here is really a look at the types of innovation that you want coming out of your company. Do you want incremental innovation? So in other words, I'll use the example of a phone, the Samsung phone or any phone, and we're going to put apps on the phone and we're going to allow the phone to do different types of things. So that's kind of close to what we normally know, and that's probably what a lot of companies do. They spend research and development dollars on things that they know. Now, an innovation for maybe Samsung or others in that electronics field would be, okay, let's go into glasses, like the Google glasses. That's an adjacency, right? Still delivers information, still very similar processes, but it's a whole different adjacency. So this chart really, the company needs to decide how far out do they want to go. And you also have to think about, okay, if I'm going out far, can I still take advantage of the big ship, right? At Cisco, we got in trouble a little bit because we wanted to take advantage of the big ship, so we got into physical security. It was going all digital. It was all cameras. It was all tapes. You think of a casino. It has little cameras all over that watch you. it was all going back to tapes. So we said, hey, it's going to go digital. We can disrupt this market. And we said, we're going to use our sales force to sell this, because we have this huge sales force and all these customers. But what we found is the sales guy didn't know the physical security guy. It was a different buying center. Second thing, he didn't understand tilt, zoom, pan on cameras. He knew nothing to talk about, so he was uninformed about the product. And then the third thing, which was probably the biggest thing, is he didn't get compensated as richly as he did selling things he knew. He knew how to sell switches and routers to the IT guys. So we had three things going against us there. And that's where you have to really think about, from a corporation, do we want to take advantage of what we're doing, or are we going to create our own sales force, which is actually what we did for physical security. We created our own sales force. And then it got more expensive, right? So entrepreneurship at SAP, we want to create entrepreneurs. We want to be innovative. We want 75,000 people coming to us with ideas. We want to provide them an environment that's safe. And we want to provide them an environment where they can maybe take their idea and be a part of that, okay, as a true entrepreneur would. And we'll give them money. We'll give them the channel to market. We'll give them, hopefully, a safe environment so that they don't get fired if this doesn't work out. And it doesn't. I mean, if it doesn't work out, we give them a new idea if we like them. We also they can go back to their old division. Okay, so you create that safe environment. Again, these are all just aspects that you need to look at as kind of criteria of new ideas. You know, this last kind of challenge, we got 400 new ideas from around the world. We did one at Cisco. We got 1,200 ideas from the employee base. 90-some% of those ideas, though, are we have a phone, we're going to put some special apps on it. So it wasn't really anything breakthrough. It wasn't really anything adjacent. And because the people within the company don't always think about the adjacencies. They're not allowed to think about the adjacencies. So, but there are 4 or 5% that are really pretty good ideas, pretty interesting, and things that we wanted to pursue. And the other thing is we wanted to create a culture, or we want to create a culture where people feel like they can provide new ideas and be innovative and be entrepreneurial and try new things. Go talk to customers. You know, today in this process, I'll show you a little map there. We have a process where you go talk to customers to validate your ideas. And for engineers, they never have done that. They've never talked to a customer. But they think they have a great idea. So we help them. Hey, let's go talk to Samsung about this. This is a new idea that we think they'd be interested in. Let's go talk to Colgate, Procter & Gamble, Nestle. We have many customers that may be interested in this. Let's go validate it. That's one of the issues with research and development in general, is that they don't talk enough to customers while they're developing. So we have 3 phases of the methodology. We have a methodology. We have the ideate section, which is bring us your ideas, let's talk about it. We will provide you a mentor, just like a venture capital would. You know, we're going to give you funding, and then we give you a mentorship. Let's talk to other experts. Oh, you have an idea about retail? Let's go talk to the retail vertical. Let's go talk, and then let's go, and so that's the ideate. Then, if we continue with that, we don't validate. Okay, we've got the idea, we build a business case, this is what we're going to sell, this is how we're going to sell it, this is who we're going to target first. Here's our value prop, here's our benefits. We then go validate that with customers. We go meet with Safeway, we go meet with Walmart. We're thinking about an idea in retail. Is this something you'd be interested in? We think it will drive this kind of value. It will drive your customer retention up. It'll drive your supply chain costs down. Hey, Walmart says yes. Okay, Walmart, now would you pay for this? That's when it gets tougher. But yeah, if you drive this kind of value, we like 10 to 1 value. If you drive $10 to me, I'll pay $1 for this, absolutely. Okay? So we go through that validation phase. And then the incubate is the actual building of that solution. So once we've talked to about 20 customers, we're ready to invest. We're ready to go forward, okay? And we actually then, okay, come join our group. You're not working in as an engineer in the networks and switching group. You're coming over here, you're gonna be part of our group. And then we're gonna build this business with you. So it's an interesting model. It's an interesting model. It has some that have done well, some that have not made it, and we recycle the people. Types of ideas we support, I'm actually gonna go to this one. This is the type of stuff we look at. We're looking at to disrupt marketplaces. Okay, I mentioned connected car, digital health, education. When I was with Cisco, we did a nice big project here for smart cities in Songdo. So I would come every month for about 10 months. You guys were building a new city, and we were trying to provide Cisco the infrastructure around health, education, security, the transportation. We were trying to create this city that was digital. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. But those are some of the things we look at. I've already talked about some of the benefits. Let me just finish with this. So again, coming back to what do startups need, whether they're in a big company or outside the real startup world. You know, in a big company, you need the CEO to say, I want to do this, if it's a major program. I want to do this, and I'll invest the money, okay? And if things get in your way, you can say, oh, no, but, you know, John Chambers or Bill McDermott said we can do this. So, so your opinion is not as important to me right now. And you have to kind of protect the new companies. You have to, like a nest, right? You have to let them grow. Because most people don't like the new company, right? Second thing, patient capital I mentioned. And that has to come again from the CEO, because the division people all have goals around quarters. I gotta meet quarter profit, I gotta meet quarter revenue. I don't have time to mess with this little startup. So I'm gonna kill it. I'm not gonna spend any more money on that. And then thirdly, I mentioned the channel. You know, are you gonna use the channel you have? Because it's an advantage for a startup to have that channel, to have access to customers. Most startups struggle to meet customers. We've got that in a big company. But you have to think about the channel and how you get to those customers, okay? And that's it. So that's the journey from both a startup and a corporate environment. I think in Korea, the challenge is not money. It's not the customers. It's going to be starting to modify the culture, which I think is happening. I'm seeing startups come up in Korea that can compete on the world market. So thank you very much.
땡큐 딘. 네, 세 번째 순서로 헬더 안투네스 시스코 선임이사님을 모시고 이노베이션 앳 시스코라는 주제로 발표를 들어보시겠습니다. 박수로 모시겠습니다.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you. And special thanks to the event organizers for inviting me to share a little bit about innovation at Cisco with you. A little bit about Cisco. So we're quite a large company, 30-year-old company. We pride ourselves in actually having in our DNA quite a bit of innovation. And one statistic that you'll see up on this slide is actually quite interesting, which is the amount of Cisco's revenue, or the percentage of Cisco revenue that we actually spend on research and development. It's actually higher than Apple and a lot of other very popular innovative companies. So innovation has always been inbred into the way we do business. What I'd like to share a little bit with you today is a little bit about how we are expanding our innovation footprint, because we recognized that innovation in the format that we had used to reach the company's success to present day would be insufficient. And so we created various additional innovation channels or input channels of ideas into the company, much similar to some of the thoughts that you've heard from the other speakers, but quite innovative for us because, again, 74,000 people. That number is actually outdated at this stage because we just did another acquisition. It's very hard to steer the big machine and to make the company nimble. And yesterday you heard a lot about ambidextrous. And so what we actually try to do is implement vehicles or methods or different input channels of innovation in the company that would allow us to be quite ambidextrous. So if we look at the typical innovation framework which we've used to really bring us here today, it was built again around a very healthy R&D spend, always greater than 13% of our revenue. And then a combination of building that in-house and then having a very healthy merger and acquisition system as well. So 170 acquisitions during the past 10 years. But in some cases, partnerships as well. And you might find it ironic that in some cases we partner with companies in some verticals that we actually compete with on other verticals. And so the integration of these three elements of building, buying, and partnering is truly what drove us here today. And we are market leaders across these key areas: mobility, security, collaboration, data center virtualization, and video. Very good. So you would think we're doing quite well. We've grown from a very small company founded by two scientists at Stanford University to a $50 billion company, a very healthy build, buy, partner innovation framework. Life is good. Well, the reality is if you stay static, you run the risk of being irrelevant down the road. And I will share a very interesting statistic with you. If you look back at the list of Fortune 500 companies in 1965, what percentage of those companies do you think are still there? So the answer is 19%. It's a staggering figure. And I went back in time quite a bit, because if we look at the last 10, 15 years, the acceleration of companies dropping off the Fortune 500 lists is much, much faster than what it was. And so as a company, we had what we call an aha moment, which is to say, we're a healthy company, we have a healthy business, we have a lot of money in the bank. What can we do to expand our innovation footprint? And this slide I just like to share with you because it's representative of exactly how rapidly things are moving around us due to innovation. So most of you are familiar with, sorry, I went forward a little too fast. Anyways, so you're familiar with the services that were there, the Amazons, Uber for transportation, Airbnb, Tesla, an innovative car company in Silicon Valley. So in essence, if you look at the last 10 years, the accelerated pace of innovation has just been phenomenal. And now we're entering a phase where the internet growth is going to accelerate even more as we start entering the age of the Internet of Everything. And you hear Internet of Things. Cisco, we call it the Internet of Everything because it's really more than things. It's connecting people, machines, and processes. So when you bring it all together, it's more the Internet of Everything. This is going to change the way we work, the way we live, the way we play, but it's also going to present tremendous challenges, not only from a technological perspective, but also from a business perspective. Therefore, the need to think of additional innovation channels in order to be able to meet these demands. And so if we look at the capabilities that IoE will demand, it's really about having a platform that allows for the massive scalability of the different types of devices to connect to your networks. It's all about different business models. So there's a big shift from CapEx to OpEx in some cases. Security and privacy. I mean, security is at the base of this. If it's not secure, it doesn't really change from a PowerPoint into application. It all starts with security. And real-time decisions. Dean mentioned connected car. I was actually the managing director for the connected car project in Cisco prior to my function in corporate strategy today, which is why I had the pleasure to also spend a lot of time in Korea and work very closely with Hyundai and Kia, and also obviously at our facility in Songdo. Real-time decisions, so deterministic networks, things of this nature are going to require a completely different innovative approach into developing these networks that we know of today. So from this perspective, if you look at this innovation model is really going to require that we develop these vertical solutions, so oil and gas, connected cities, connected transportation, discrete manufacturing, but use horizontal platforms. And what I mean by that is leverage technology that is applicable in all these verticals, and then just customize the various specific applications and services that go to each vertical. This is a tremendous challenge for us. We were predominantly a network infrastructure company that over the years expanded our footprint into areas like collaboration, voice, and video. But when you look at now the challenges of the Internet of Things, and also the challenges that are presented from different geographical locations, we really had to take a different approach and develop this platform that could scale over multiple verticals. The aha moment was quite simply that no one company can do this alone. We need to expand our footprint. We have 25,000 engineers out of the 75,000, lots of great partnerships, but we are now entering a phase where we'll be developing hundreds of vertical solutions. And those solutions all have that horizontal platform that I mentioned, but also will have very specific needs per geography, per business vertical. This presents new technological challenges. But the end result is for this to be implemented, for this to scale out, we need to develop common reference models and platforms so that the interoperability between what we build and other companies build all comes together. And the only logical conclusion to this was this can only be solved as an industry. No one can do this alone. And so what we started by creating these IoE innovation centers around the world. I'm happy to say the first one here in Asia was in Songdo. As Dean had mentioned, it's centered around smart connected cities, public sector. We have one in Tokyo as well, a few in Europe, one in Toronto, and one in Rio de Janeiro that's focused on oil and gas. The purpose of these centers was to really take our engineering closer to the edge where we could be in touch with local academia, local incubators, local accelerators, and in some cases partnerships with local startups in order to have a much broader innovation footprint and have ideation flow from that back into the company. We really focus on 3 horizons. So we're using these centers to showcase existing capabilities. So our salespeople love this opportunity. Rather than having to bring everybody to Silicon Valley all the time, we now have the capability to demonstrate a lot of our offerings with a worldwide footprint. Solution development, and I'll give you an example. So working on a smart parking solution, the sensors used in Korea may be from a local company versus the sensors that we used in Marseille, which was from a French company. The platform will be Cisco, but the sensory endpoints may be different. And so the ability to be geographically located near the ecosystem allows us to, in essence, do solution development in a much more customizable and cost-effective form. And then, of course, investment in research. So the third part is really what excites me because we're talking about innovation. And in this case, it excites me because it's really, Cisco has traditionally been a company that acquired other large companies to gain market share. And in the last 20 months, we've actually done $2 billion worth of early seed investments. So again, we're innovating even the way we invest. For the obvious reasons, we need to be able to create and expand our capability to have additional input of relevant ideas into the company. So we have 7 centers. We have quite a healthy pipeline of additional cities on the way. And so far, this program has been a tremendous success. In addition to that, we created an investment fund specifically for this. I think as Dean mentioned, all of this costs money. But I think the question we need to ask ourselves at the end of the day, what does it cost us not to do so? And if you go back to that list of Fortune 500 companies of 1965, perhaps they could give you a better answer as to what does it cost you not to innovate. So a very healthy innovation fund geared towards these endeavors. In addition to that, and this is very similar to what Dean shared about SAP, we created what we call Cisco Alphas. So the ability to actually fund and accelerate startups within the company. And again, it starts with adjacent ideas, but in some cases it doesn't have to be adjacent ideas if the idea is compelling. And what we have done to sort of take the handcuffs out of the big corporate machine is literally spin these companies out into separate facilities with all the necessary support and funding for them to operate as separate entity and, in essence, startups. So again, being ambidextrous. In addition, we implemented a series of grand challenges. So again, Dean touched about how we had these innovation marathons inside the company that produced hundreds, in some cases thousands of ideas, but literally at the end of the day, only a small portion of those ideas were relevant. What we decided to do with these grand challenges was actually frame some problem statements and, in essence, issue these challenges around very specific areas where we're looking for great innovation and great ideas. So we did 3 in 2014. We have a few that are in the pipeline for this year. One was around IoT security, and it's amazing. The amount of innovation that we received from some of the entrants. And by the way, this is open to both Cisco people, to outside startups, to academia. So we received literally submittals from all over the world. So we did one on security, we did one on broader IoT innovation, and then we did one very specific to China around some of the challenges that they face in their cities. I'll just share a few of the statistics for the Security Grand Challenge. And by the way, we put some money up. We then hosted the winners of these events at the IoT World Forum, which last year was in Chicago. The year before was in Barcelona, and this year in December it will be held in Dubai. And the IoT World Forum was something that Cisco formed with a lot of partners 3 years ago to, in essence, bring this ecosystem together that includes, in some cases, a lot of our own competitors. So the Security Grand Challenge was very successful because IoT, the base for IoT is security and then scalability and how you manage and deploy these devices. But the key to these challenges wasn't just to issue these challenges and award a few prizes and congratulate a few people in the IoT World Forum. It was actually to then rope these people in to our innovation framework. So in some cases, some of these winners are working inside those Cisco alphas. Some are working inside the Cisco IoT centers and working closely with Cisco and other partners in developing this technology so that when it's mature enough, it can then be fed into the larger distribution machine. On the Grand Challenge, again, 837 submissions from 71 countries. And again, the key here was to really define these problem statements in a way that from the get-go, the submissions would be relevant and would be of strategic importance to the company. Because I think the challenge, as we found out in the past, is when you made it too broad, you received a lot of submissions that absolutely were not of strategic importance to the company. The China challenge was something that we did because our sales team in China brought some very specific, city-specific challenges, and so we added that at the last minute. And perhaps, who knows, we may do a Korea-specific Grand Challenge, considering we have a very important and very strategic footprint here in Songdo. So the end result is really about how do we filter all of these ideas from these multiple input channels into our big machine and, in essence, commercialize them. Productize them and commercialize them. And what we do is we filter these according to the following priorities. So corporate priorities, my group, corporate strategy group, works very closely with the various business units inside of Cisco to literally look at their current business today, but to also map out future needs of that business. In essence, looking at technology and business trends to see where this is all going so that we can help them guide them in terms of what they should be developing, guide them in some cases in terms of what we should be acquiring to fill some gaps, but more importantly, guide them 3-5 years out in terms of what technology trends are going to take those business units. So gaps, fit to Cisco implementation or investment, very important. Technology viability, and in some cases, if it's not, then we now have the alphas, we now have the IoT centers to incubate and to help accelerate some of that technology until one day it is viable. In the past, we didn't have that. We, like most other companies, most other people, and I think a few were referenced yesterday during the presentations, have said no to a lot of very interesting things that today we wish we had not said no to. This affords us the ability to continue to incubate and to, in essence, take some of these not so viable technologies today to a future date where perhaps they can be very, very viable. Market need and size, commercial viability, potential revenue, and of course the relationship to existing business, but not limited to that. The end result is really what I wanted to share with you is all of these efforts in the last year have actually paid off dramatically. We moved up 32 points on the scale of the Boston Computing Group most innovative companies of Silicon Valley last year. Only Tesla moved a bit more than we did, and you guys know Tesla is a very innovative company. They're actually ruffling the feathers of the auto industry quite well. So this is an acknowledgement that adding these additional channels, adding these additional capabilities to our innovation framework is starting to pay off in spades. And so with that said, one other point that I would like to maybe give you as food for thought, it isn't sometimes so much about innovation, but it's what you do with innovation. And this is actually a challenge we now have because we've expanded our innovation footprint and we've expanded the capability to have innovation channels. So we're going to have more ideas flowing in. So the challenge now, and this is probably a challenge for most, is how do you then filter all of this into innovation that can be productized and monetized? And that is an entirely different discussion that I would love to share with you on a separate occasion, because we're actually also doing some very interesting things on that perspective. So in the end, no matter where you're from, how you say it, it's truly about innovation. If you don't innovate, you run the risk of being acquired, or in some cases dying and falling off the lists, as those companies from 1965 have found out. And so with that in mind, I thank you once again. And any questions after the event, I'd be happy to answer for yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Antoine. Thank you. 자, 네 번째 순서로 제니강 시만텍 국제부이사님을 모시고 민첩감과 혁신이란 주제 발표를 듣겠습니다. 박수로
you.
모시겠습니다.
Thank you. So this time I had a pleasure of spending 5 days in my home country here in Korea and 2 weeks in China on a business trip before I took off San Francisco airport. So one of the, I'm going to go a little bit easy this time. I think a little bit of fundamentals I'm going to cover today. Because Dean had mentioned more focuses around the cultural change and mindset change, which I think it's a lot more relevant in the audience today. So coming to Korea and spending 2 weeks in China and back in States, one of the observations I noticed was that I saw a child fell down on the street in Korea. I see the mom running and pick him up and help him to stand up. Right? And I saw the same situation in China. I'm not saying all the Chinese moms like that, but I saw a situation where the child fell and the mom was yelling at that child. I suppose that she's probably asking, why weren't you be careful, right? And if you see the same situation back in the States, most of the moms wait until the child gets up on his own feet. So I'm going to come back to this, but I just want you to think about what do you do, what do you say to your child and your team members when you see them fail. So I'm going to come back to this later on. So talk a little bit about innovation, and I think I've heard from yesterday and today and how important innovation is. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you know how innovation is necessary in terms of getting ahead of competitions. And if you look back, this is like one of the popular toys that people used in 1950s and even before then. How many of your kids or your friends around that their children play with these toys as their favorite toys these days? No, right? So you know for sure when you look back, what you see around you these days, that's not going to stay. a couple of decades ahead of time. Same example here, 1973, the first handheld cell phone device came out, and then after that, you remember the flip phone, right? Nobody has it this day, and then there's a phone with the data, and 2007 was a time when the iPhone, the Apple came up with the first the version of iPhone. So what's next is a big question, so I think everybody agrees that there needs to be something new that we're gonna have to think about how we're gonna go after the market, right? Because if you do the same thing as everybody else does, that we're not gonna get ahead. So the main question here is, do you have a time to innovate, and do you know how to innovate? So I'm not gonna focus a lot about what we do in Symantec in terms of what are the things that we do to innovate products, but I'm just gonna more focus on more of fundamental mindset here. One of the research that we ran, and it turned out that if a customer find a defect, a problem in your product, it costs you 50 times more. So that means, let's say if customer finds problem, it takes 50 hours to fix it, whereas if you have your developer, when they're actually coding and making the product, and they fix it, only takes 1 hour to fix it, right? So basically the fundamental concept here is that quality frees up your time and resources to do something more valuable. So that's really the key point. So one of the things that we have gone through in the past years, and I think Symantec was slightly behind some of these leading companies in terms of agile transformation. I think many of you have heard about the agile transformation, where this is more about software development methodology that we've been using. So here's an example of how the conventional, the traditional waterfall methodology, moving from waterfall to agile, that we have seen a significant improvement of the product quality, and in the matters of tens and thousands of defects being reduced over time following that methodology. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So for those of you who are not familiar, I've heard that it's not very predominantly used in Korea, so I'm just going to go a little bit more basic here. So it's just a simple term. If you look at the conventional, traditional waterfall cycle of work, that means you plan for everything that you want to build up front, right? So you have plans for everything, and then you go into designing and developing and testing, and then you release it, right? So it could take 6 months, it could take even longer. So the idea of agile, the methodology is basically that you iterate that cycle in a shorter period of time. So you deliver something valuable to the customers, you get your feedback, and then you deliver what's next, what's more important than next, and then that's how the agile concept is working. And this is another view of what that means. In the traditional waterfall model, where the boxes are the ship, like your products that you're delivering, and the dies over there is basically the risk. So basically you are you're putting the risk of failing toward the end of the release. So you're waiting until the end of the release to get that out to the market. That means more risk, and there's less of valuable products that you're delivering to the customers, and you're spending more money on doing that. So the agile concept is basically that you spread the risk by iterating cycles quickly, so you deliver something that is working and what the customers need quickly, so you can deliver values. Because if you don't deliver anything, customers not going to get anything. So that's the key point. And another important paradigm shift from the waterfall to agile is that in the past, in the waterfall, the scope was fixed. So that means, okay, I've got 10 or 20 features that I want to deliver in the next 5 months, right? And based on what you want to deliver, the resources and schedule can change. So this is what I want to deliver, this is how much time I need, and how much resources that I need to deliver. So one of the cases we had a long time ago, one of the enterprise solutions, that we had a feature that are planned, and it turned out we didn't have enough time and resources to deliver. So we keep slipping the dates. So it turned out it was supposed to be a 6-month project and turned out to be a 2-year project. So that means for that 2 year, the customers are not getting anything, right? So basically that was a sort of a waterfall mechanism, and now moving into Agile, that is a completely different upside down approach. That scope is what's moving parts, right? And resource and schedule. So you got the 2-3 weeks of cycle, you got to deliver something, and within that, you have a fixed resources too. But what you want to deliver within that period of time is where you have a flexibility, and you're going to prioritize what works. So within the 3 week, at the end of 3 weeks, you're going to deliver something valuable to the customers. So that's the key paradigm shift in the Agile time frame. So one of the 4 key values, and this is not Symantec invented, this is one of those Agile framework out there, that methodology that everybody knows. So the key manifestos as Agile, basically the 4 key values. So when I go through these 4 items, and I'll have more following slides on that, think about in your organizations where you're currently putting more efforts. So number 1 of Agile values is individuals and interactions. So individual focus is team-driven, and it's individual-driven, not about somebody telling you what to do. So individuals interactions over processes and tools. Important factor. And number 2 is working software. You need to have a working software that you need to add values for the customer. So working software is more important than comprehensive documentations. If you remember, I think in our company too, used to be, we've been writing a lot of documents about how we're going to build a product and writing a lot of thick manuals for the customer. So there's a lot of emphasis around how we need to focus on making the product working, so the workable solutions we deliver to the market. And then the third part is customer collaboration over contract negotiations. It's a critical element that you need to interact with the customers to confirm what their needs are and what they want, because you need to feed that back into your development process. Otherwise, you'll be building the product with a lot of assumptions in your head, right? So that's important third factor. And then the number 4 value is responding to change, as opposed to following a plan. Just because you had planned it, I'm just going to stick with it. That's not going to work, because the market's changing, customer needs changing, and everything is changing. So you cannot stick to the plan just because you planned it. So it's a critical element. So I talk a little bit more about this. So individuals, the interactions. So if you take a look at this picture, you can see in the traditional waterfall model, what happened was I'm a QA engineer. I'm just going to do the testing. I'm a developer. I'm just going to do the coding. And I'm a manager. I'm going to make decisions, right? So there were distinct roles and responsibility of all these individuals and the functions. So if something happens that doesn't belong to my roles and responsibility, that's not my job. That was a mentality. So the key factor here in Agile is that it's a shared responsibility. It's a team's responsibility. It's an individual's responsibility. So whatever that gets in the way of team delivering something, you work together and you take the lead, and every team member's own to solve the problem. So you're not just, as a developer, I also need to do the testing. I also need to mitigate some of the risk. And that's the key value of the Agile being a shared responsibility. And one of the key challenge that we had at Symantec when we were going through this Agile transformation was the managers were concerned about, okay, if the team's doing everything and they're making all the decisions, they're building everything, what am I going to do, right? So there was a lot of concerns and agitations in the team around how the managers would do. And I think Georg was talking earlier about the pianist versus a conductor, if you remember that concept. So the concept in Agile is that the managers play a role of orchestrating things and supporting teams to be successful, as opposed to telling them what to do. So second portion is second value is basically working software, right? So you need to deliver something. So in the traditional waterfall, you had to make the entire cake from all the layers of the product. So from the data layer to platform and up to the user interface layer, you had to have everything fully baked to be able to give it to the customers. The new concept in Agile basically is that you have a feature and functionality that you want to build. So you build the only layers of the functionality that it requires to deliver on that feature. You have to have that functionality and feature working, but only the piece that is required to support that. You don't have to have everything completely working to deliver on that. So that's the concept of working software. And the third portion is a continuous customer feedback. So you need to interact with the customers to make sure that they understand what they want, because oftentimes you assume that customers need all 4 of these features, and it turned out when you talk to customers that they may say, okay, we don't need create report feature, we don't need update and delete features, but we need to know, we need to be able to read the report, right? So you deliver that first, what the customer require, and then leave rest to the next iterations of your deliverables. So that's the key point. And number 4, responding to change. This is called adaptive planning. So I'll share one of the quote here that Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until they get hit in their mouth, right? So basically what that means is things change all the time, as I mentioned. Customers' needs change and market change. You can't just stick to a regional plan just because you planned it. So this is called adaptive planning over predictive planning. So that's the number 4. And so we talked about the agile mindset. So this mindset is, well, this agile methodology is primarily built for the software development cycles, but it's applicable across any kind of businesses in terms of the mindset itself. And process, when it comes to agile process, you probably heard a lot about Scrum, and that's mostly predominantly used, the agile process that most of the companies in Silicon Valley uses for the feature development, most likely. And the Kanban is another one that's used for more repeatable work cycles. And Lean Startup, I think you've heard that many times in this event, that it's used for pure innovation type of things. And this is just one slide showing what, in a nutshell, the Scrum looks like. So you have a list of long backlogs of features that you want to deliver, and then you have each iteration. In our company, we try to stay within 2 to 3 week iteration cycle for the single sprint. So each sprint, in the beginning of the sprint, you prioritize what are the key deliverables and key features that you want to deliver. So you prioritize and you develop the features and you build it, and then at the end of the iteration, 2 to 3 week iteration cycle, you have something that is working, something that is a shippable, what we call it, potentially shippable product increment. So that's what you deliver to the customers, and then the next iteration, sprint 2, you do the same process of taking the next set of what's important and build that for the customers. So talking a little bit about now you got the mindset set up and you know what you need to do and what are the processes that you want to follow. I just talk a little bit about what you should do and you shouldn't do. And I think in addition to some of the great examples in SAP and Cisco and the CA that we just heard today, that this is one of the sort of a don't do examples here. And Ron Johnson, when he was running a JCPenney, within 17 months of time, the company had lost $1 billion. Why is that? It's because back then the CEO did not listen to what customers were saying and did not pay attention to data that they show that customers want discounts and customers wants and this and that, and he ignored and he followed his guts in terms of how he wants to run the business. And in Silicon Valley, I think some of you have heard this term HIPPO. You know what that stands for? That means the highest paid person's opinion, right? So if the person in your organization or in your company, the person who makes the most money, makes all the decisions, then this is what happens to the company at the end of the game. And another example, I think all of you in the room recognize what that incident was with the Korean Airlines, the VP, and the nut incident, right? It had to turn the plane around. So this is another example of the HIPPO incident where you have a dominant person making all the decisions. If you think about it, you have, in our company in Symantec, we have 20,000 employees and then one CEO, right? If one CEO makes all the decisions, how can you imagine that that idea would be better than the 20,000 people's ideas and opinions, right? So that's a critical element. And one of the great example that I was chatting with my colleague in Adobe, that they have this a program called the Kickbox. This is a program to foster the innovation in their company. I think so far the box has been given to some around like 1,000 employees so far. What it is basically a similar concept as what the other panel talked about, is that there are a couple of things in the box. So one, sugar and caffeine that you need to be able to think and innovate. And then they also have a $1,000 credit card in the box that you can spend anywhere you want. You don't have to report what you bought with the card. It just it gives you the money to be able to turn your ideas into something really valuable for the customers. And then the third one is to actually, well, you don't have to follow the process, but if you want to, there's a step-by-step process as to how you want to go from the ideating your ideas down to making it reality. So that's the sort of a process, process instruction. And then the last one is the small book of bad ideas. If you want to have great ideas, you need to have tons of bad ideas, right? So this is a book where you need to write down all the bad ideas, and from that you will drive some of the great ideas. And that's where I think Adobe has some of the greatest inventions and innovations, internally and external products that they had out of this program. And then similar, Hugh Malazzi is a VP of innovation in Intuit. I don't know if you know this company. It's a US tech software company that is just about to go global. And Hugh Malazzi came to our campus and gave a talk, and we had a little chat in a small group as well. And he's the one who's a dedicated person driving the innovative mindset and the initiative in the company. And some of the really greatest ideas came from that effort of trying to increase innovation. 3 things he mentioned what they do to increase innovation. Number 1, they give all the employees an unstructured time. 10% of your time every week can be spent on thinking about innovation and something different than what you're assigned to do. So that unstructured time. It's not so much the number, because if you're thinking about 40 hours a week and spend 10%, that's 4 hours. But it's not so much the hours itself. It's giving you an air cover that you can do something other than what you're asked to do. So that unstructured time. And then another one is a training on how to do innovation. The one great example that I mentioned was the great process that most companies use in that regards is a lean startup. So you probably want to check that out as well. And then number 3 is a process. So they have this web tool called the Brainstorm, where if you have great ideas, you can put your ideas in there, collaborate with other people, how you bring that out to somewhere that you can actually turn that into something tangible for the customers or internal improvement. One of the things I heard in Intuit, where the employee had used this unstructured time to come up with an idea of reducing the manual work. So it used to be 5 days of work, and now it's only 1 day of work. And the innovation team had asked him, why didn't you come up with the idea before? And his answer was, I didn't have a time. Right? So that's kind of where some of these great initiatives help the companies to be more innovative. So let me close by saying, quoting one of these, I love this quote that talks about failure doesn't really even exist, right? If something doesn't go in the way that you plan to do, and you learn something from it, that's called the learning. It's not failure. The failure is basically if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and not making a progress, that's called a failure. Otherwise, everything else is learning, and that's a good thing. I love this quote. So coming back to this, the child fell down on the street. So the fail is basically first attempt in learning, right? So next time, this is supposed to be animation, by the way, but anyway, so basically, next time you see your children, your team members, and your friends see them fail, you probably want to ask them, what have you learned from it, right? So encourage them to fail. We need to fail more to be able to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, 제니가. Thank you. 지금까지 실리콘밸리 IT 거인 우리 혁신 기업가들의 좋은 말씀 들었습니다. 그러면 지금 국내 전문가 2분을 모시고 패널 토의와 질의응답을 간단히 진행할 텐데요. 우리 이쪽에 계신 분이 이호준 헤이그룹 코리아 전무님이시고요. 제 옆에 계신 분이 유성문 라이엇 게임즈 코리아 이사님입니다. 먼저 이 전무님께서 오늘 발표 어떻게 좀 들으셨는지 또 궁금한 게 있으시면 자유롭게 질문해 주시죠.
네, 지금까지 이런 소량 기업들이 이런 혁신을 지속적으로 유지해온 비결이 어떤 부분이었는지에 대해서 좋은 사례를 공유해 주셔서 제 입장에서 상당히 도움이 많이 됐던 것 같고요. 제가 그 몇 가지 저는 이제 좀 조직이나 사람 관점에서 몇 가지 질문을 좀 드리고자 합니다. 우선 그 마지막에 발표하셨던 그 시만텍의 제니강 이사님께 질문 드리고 싶은데 아주 그 어질리티라는 부분에 대해서 네 가지의 키 밸류를 이야기해 주셔서 한국의 많은 기업들이 혁신을 해가는 과정에서 느끼는 어떤 스피드나 그 다음에 어질리티에 있어서 좀 한계에 와 있는 부분들에 좋은 시사점을 주시는 것 같은데요. 그 중에서 아까 그 표현도 하셨지만 이 오케스트라와 같은 거는 협력이라는 부분들이 상당히 중요성이 더해질 것 같은데요. 어떻게 보면 민첩성이라는 부분들을 잘 실행하기 위해서. 근데 이제 한국의 많은 기업들의 경우에 이 조직 간의 사일로 같은 거라든가 혹은 효과적인 커뮤니케이션이 잘 되지 않아서 아까 말씀하신 어떤 쉐어드 리스판시빌리티에 대한 부분들이 잘 이루어지지 않는 경우들이 많은데 실제로 뭐 시만텍의 케이스도 괜찮고요. 아니면 다른 경험에 기반해서 뭐 그런 부분들을 조금 더 효과적으로 그 이제 좀 그 많이 일어나게 할 수 있는 그런 방법들이 어떤 게 있는지. 한국의 경우에는 예를 들어서 뭐 KPI를 조직 간에 공유를 한다라든가 혹은 그 어떤 팀 간에 크로스 펑셔널한 팀을 구성해서 같이 업무를 하게 한다라든가 뭐 그런 방법들이 있을 것 같은데 그 부분에 대해서 먼저 질문을 좀 드리고 싶습니다.
Yes, I think there are a couple of things. I asked this question to some other leaders in different companies also. I think that one of the things that is very important that many people had agreed is that you need to have executives, and from the level of CEO down to the managers, you need to have the cohesive story and emphasis that this is a critical for the organization. So you need to create a culture where people feel more comfortable to speak up and comfortable in failing. So put more emphasis and empower your employees to do things on their own. So I think that's one of the key factors that I've heard. And the other thing that I think this agile the development methodology itself is really helping to like enable and give more power to the individuals and a team. So it becomes more teamwork and more becomes the success of the team. And I think that mentality itself is a cascading across different teams. And I think I like the idea of having a common goals and matrices, so you don't necessarily set up the goals just for your team, right? So because it ultimately has to be beneficial for the company, so come up with the metrics and ideas and how we can measure that like all together. I think that's important factor too. But number one, I think that the company has to have the willingness and conviction to be able to create the culture that people feel more empowered and comfortable in failing. I think that one of the things that I notice in Korean culture is that everybody's super intelligent, smart, which is great. But I think a lot of us are very, very afraid of failing and making a mistakes. Right? It's okay to make a mistakes because if you don't move, if you don't, take a one step ahead, then nothing's going to happen. Right? So that's a key thing that I want to mention.
네, thank you.
이 전무님 또 질문.
네, 제가 그러면 그 SAP의 딘 부사장님께 그 방금 그 제니강 이사님도 이야기하셨지만 아까 강의하시면서 실패를 용인하는 문화라는 게 사실 한국에서도 많은 기업들이 그런 부분들을 그런 문화를 그런 컬처를 만들어야 된다라고 이야기를 하면서도 쉽지가 않은 것 같습니다. 그래서 그 중에 상당히 중요한 부분들이 그런 마인드셋을 이끌어낼 수 있게 한 어떤 여러 가지 조직 내의 환경을 만드는 부분, 결국 스스로 인게이지할 수 있고 또 스스로 그런 부분들을 자발적으로 할 수 있는 분위기를 만들어내는 여러 가지 방법들이 있을 것 같은데요. 혹 SAP에서는 어떤 뭐 디벨롭먼트 혹은 뭐 트레이닝 프로그램이 있을 수도 있고 그런 프로그램들이 혹시 있는지 소개해 주실 수 있을까요?
Yeah, your it's very hard to change culture, and I think the number one thing, though, is proof, is you do it, you know. And in SAP's case and Cisco's case, when I was at Cisco, they created a division that was there, created to be innovative, to do new things. And then once these groups that are funded are successful, like at Cisco with telepresence, it became a $2 billion entity, so it met their goal. John Chambers could say, hey, that was a success, okay? So you need to prove it, because people don't believe you if you just say, oh, I'm innovative. You can do whatever you want. Go ahead and fail. Nobody believes you. But in our group, we had failure. We had to redeploy people. We had to ask them to go do something out or help them find another job in Cisco because they weren't good at being innovative, let's say. So well, number one is all cultures only believe it when it happens, right? You say you do something, then you do it. That's number one. Number two, on the education side, like Jenny, we are big believers in agile design, and we call it design thinking, you know, which is this whole process of talk to the customer, go change it. You know, I think about my wife likes handbags, right? Maybe like women in Korea, they like Louis Vuitton, they like Hermes, they like Chanel, right? Those designers, they design, and it would be neat if they came to my wife and said, do you like it in black or blue? Do you like it in red? Do you like it big, small? Do you want pockets? Do you not want pockets? And they obviously do things like that. But that's the design thinking process, is I'm gonna design a purse, I'm gonna design it for you, you are my target market, and I want to have you interactive with me to design this purse for you. Because I think there are many yous, people like you, that I'm gonna sell this to. So let's go back and forth. You know, leather, not leather, brown, black, etc. And so we teach people that. We have classes on that. We have a whole organization that goes out and tries to change the culture. And again, prove it. And get away from the waterfall that Jenny mentioned, right? Because that's how we always used to develop software. We'd get an idea. 2 years later, we have software. And we go to the customer and say, here it is. And they'd say, I don't want that in blue. I don't want it in black. I don't want it big. I don't want it small. And then we go back. And then it takes longer to change. So we've learned from that.
네. 유이사님은 좀 어떻게 들으셨는지?
예, 오늘 뭐 혁신을 말을 하는 자리라서 그런지 몰라도 굉장히 혁신적으로 모든 분의 발표를 뒷모습만 볼 수 있었네요. 이런 자리를 마련해 주셔서 감사하고요. 제일 첫 번째 좀 질문 드리고 싶은 부분이 이제 아까 K.E.Y 부사장님께서 말씀을 해주셨던 그 모바일하고 그다음에 사물 인터넷을 통해서 그런 혁신을 많이 시도를 하셨다고 하는데 그 이제 구체적으로 어떤 효과가 있었는지 그다음에 그걸 사용하는 뭐 예를 들어 엠플로이 입장이 됐든 아니면 뭐 개발자 입장이 됐든 어떤 이점을 얻을 수 있었는지 좀 알고 싶고요. 그다음에 저희 시스코 부사장님한테 좀 여쭤보고 싶은 게 제가 이제 개발자다 보니까 아까 보면 이제 외부적인 얘기는 말씀을 많이 해주셨고요. 근데 내부적으로 굉장히 많은 개발자가 있고 투자도 많이 하고 계시는데 그들이 계속해서 혁신적인 아이디어를 내고 발전하기 위해서 어떤 문화를 만들고 지원을 해주고 계시는지 좀 설명해 주시면 좋겠습니다.
Krishna, please.
Yeah. So from an employee standpoint, what we did is instead of prescribing, instead of telling them how they should build a certain thing, we let them first we involve them in the decision-making process. So instead of me telling them that this is the vision I have, we had a lot of brainstorming meetings where they were allowed, if I can say that, to tell me that I'm wrong and tell me a better feature or a function for that particular product, right? And then once we agreed that this indeed is the right way to do it, then we gave them the freedom to develop the product in the way they think is best, instead of using any particular technology that CA has used for 35 years or based on some integration that we would have to do later on. We let the employees pick whatever technology they think they need to build the product so that we can get to an incremental product like you were describing, like Jenny was describing, very quickly in an agile methodology. and worry about formalization later on. Because what we want to do first is validate the idea with the customer, and for that we give the employees all the freedom they need in the brainstorming as well as the development process.
Thank you for your question. So Cisco has always had a very interesting infrastructure in terms of educating people. We have an entire department in the company which is called the Cisco Network Academy that starts at the basics and the fundamentals of teaching people from high school level all the way to certified professionals how to utilize, implement, configure, manage, secure Cisco networks. We have since added to this framework a developers organization. The name escapes me because this is actually something that we announced about a month ago at Cisco Live in Milano. So, but to your question is, we just announced it. It's a framework that is geared towards the developer specifically. But it's more than just an education process. It's actually a framework that's designed and embedded in the platform that we are building. As I mentioned with the IOE, we actually have a team of developers that are actually building what we call an IOE enablement platform. This platform will be developed to have a certain level of APIs ready to entice developers to have a much easier time to develop on our platform versus developing on a competitor's platform. So it's a combination of developing and enabling these capabilities that's attracting more developers to our platform in conjunction with the spin-off from the Network Academy, which, sorry, the name escapes me. It has a catchy name, but basically it's a framework to teach and to educate and empower on the app enablement platform so that in essence we can highlight how much easier and better our platform is to develop on.
네, 지금까지 글로벌 우리 혁신가들의 얘기를 잘 들었습니다. 혁신 실행력을 높이려면 결국 끊임없는 탐색과 실험 그리고 실행력을 발휘해야 한다는 것을 저희가 이 자리에서 확인을 했는데요. 여러분은 이처럼 글로벌 혁신 기업들의 얘기를 듣고 나니 가슴이 뛰지 않으신가요? 우리도 한번 해보자. 그래, 우리 회사니까요. 이런 가슴 뭉클한 얘기를 동료들과 나누고 싶지 않으신가요? 그러면 그러고 싶으면 실행을 해야 합니다. 지금 당장 실행을 해서 우리도 혁신 대열에 끼어들어야 합니다. Why? 내가 왜 이 일을 해야 하는지, 또 자기 자신에게 솔직히 물어보고 그 답을 찾는 탐색과 새로운 도전을 위해서 우리가 계속 탐색과 실험을 계속 해 나가야 합니다. 지금까지 우리 실리콘밸리 우리 임원분들, 우리가 이제 직접 가서 만나보고 인터뷰한 임원분들 모시고 얘기를 나눴는데요. 오늘 플러그인 토크 통해서 여기 계신 모든 분들이 재미와 감동을 느끼셨으리라 믿습니다. 지금까지 함께 프로그램을 즐겨주셔서 감사합니다. 고맙습니다. Thank you.